Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this insightful session entitled MassAbility, a proven resource for successful hires. I'm Mike Sanders. I'm the Director of Workforce Talent Development at MassAbility, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's panel. So, MassAbility help bridge gaps in the behavioral health workforce by providing customized support, training, and resources that empower individuals to enter the SUD field and make meaningful differences. So today's session, it's going to highlight those efforts and more importantly, celebrate the individuals who have successfully transitioned into the critical work with MassAbility support. So we'll hear from three inspiring speakers who have made their way into the field of SUD, each bringing their unique strengths and backgrounds. So they've transformed their own journeys into powerful careers in behavioral health, becoming valuable assets to the organizations that they serve and the communities that they support. So I'd like to welcome Roscoe Hurley, Program Director for the Behavioral Health Support for Justice Involved Individuals Initiative and Recovery Coach Supervisor at the Gavin Foundation, where he supports those navigating the justice system and transitioning back into community life. Erica Walker, a recovery support navigator with High Point Treatment Center, whose work exemplifies the supportive roles essential for client recovery and growth. And finally, Lovely Harvey, a recovery coach and consultant at Massachusetts General Hospital, who brings lived experience and professional insight into his work, helping clients find stability and resistance. So each of these panelists, they're going to share how MassAbility's resources have shaped their paths and how they're going to be contributing back into behavioral health workforce in meaningful ways. So afterwards, we'll open up the floor for questions, giving you a chance to explore how similar talent integration strategies might benefit your organization. So let's dive into these powerful stories, learn a little bit from the experiences of Roscoe, Erica, and Lovely. So please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Roscoe Hurley. So, Roscoe, could you share your story with us? We'd love to hear about your experience working with MassAbility to reach your educational and career goals, a bit about your education and professional background, including your current role, and how your recovery journey has shaped your perspective on the importance of employment in that journey.
Yes, thank you, Michael, and good morning to everybody. So my name is Roscoe Hurley. I am a person in long-term recovery. I entered treatment in 2008 in a residential recovery home. And while there, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do for work. I ended up getting a job, while at the residential recovery home. And then once I graduated, I took some part-time work there, and a coworker of mine told me about the MassAbilities and how I could obtain a licensed addictions counselor certificate. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. I was kind of in limbo if I wanted to get back into the union. But this individual told me that he thought I'd probably be good at it. I took the suggestion. I connected with Teresa Young, who was my caseworker. Teresa and I still have a kind of a working relationship still into this day. I have referred folks to her. She's assisted other folks with, getting connected with MassAbilities, getting services and picking up their late act with a recovery coach training. But on my end, I did the MassAbilities course. I went to UMass. I obtained my licensed addictions counselor certificate. I eventually got a job with that residential recovery home that I had graduated. I transitioned from that from that program, to the Gavin Foundation, as you see. And since then, I've gone back to school, obtaining my associate's degree, my bachelor's degree, and then eventually my master's degree. And now I'm a LADC one. And the fact that I am a person in long-term recovery, I am a person that has with justice involvement for many years in and out of incarceration or some form of justice involvement. The program that I'm working on now, not only does it give me, the education that I needed to assist these folks, but also, that lived experience of, someone understanding, the empathy, the communication level, and then also with the training, putting it back to a professional level as well. that kind of just merges the two of them, and the MassAbility is my caseworker, Teresa Young. I always think about how easy it was to connect with her, let her know that I didn't know what I wanted to do, and how she was able to like just continually give me that information, give me that back, and give me that support, and get me to the level for where I am today, which in my opinion, it has helped me in many ways, but it's helped many others, to be supportive and help them with their transitions to a better life.
Roscoe, that's absolutely fantastic. The journey that you've taken and how you're helping people going forth into the um, in recovery is just absolutely amazing and inspiring to others. We're going to have a couple more questions for you pretty soon, but I wanted to introduce everyone to Lovely. Lovely, could you share with us how your journey led you to your current role? We'd love to hear about the support you received from MassAbility along the way, your educational and professional path, and how finding meaningful work has impacted your recovery journey.
Alrighty then. Absolutely, Michael. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody. Good morning. And thank you so much for having me. My name is Lovely Harvey, and I'm also, what's up, Roscoe? I'm a host of recovery. And first and foremost, the most thing that I can say to anybody listening, don't stop believing in yourself. That was key for me on my journey to find within myself that believing in me was going to be the best asset to result in the place that I am today. So my journey actually in 89. So my first treatment was facility, maybe I don't know, some people probably wasn't even in existence that's on this platform today. However, it wasn't until I read and actually made my mind up that doing the thing was the best thing for me and actually accepting some help. I kept going backwards and having, these digressions in my recovery path. And it wasn't until I had like a long in depth conversation with somebody else who was a little bit further on this path that they gave me some information that I still stand on today. And one is one suggestion that I'm worth it to myself and never stop believing in myself because there was a point where I had given up and I didn't realize in my journey every time I decided to go to a negative lifestyle, I was actually giving up and not even knowing that I was giving up. I was putting myself in jeopardy of being incarcerated, overdoses, dying, ending up in hospitals, and everything that comes with a negative lifestyle in the streets. So learning how to gain some coping information and some education was one of the key things that again put me in the places and opened up the doors that have opened up for me today. Mass ability was key for me because I had no clue on how to obtain the education that I wanted, the information that I needed, and to have access to some of these places to be able to do what I had in mind. I was in treatment this last go round. By the way, I'm overwhelmingly excited just to say that, my long term recovery, even though it started in 80 times, that my 5 years consistency is next month. And I'm just grateful that I learned how to stay in my own process today because that's the best example I can give somebody else is that I actually stand on staying in my own process. With my lived experience, I've suffered through, struggled through, and been through everything under the umbrella that consists of lived experience, whether it's, the homelessness, the mental health issues, the incarcerations, the substance use. So I have a plethora of experiences to draw from to be that hope for somebody else today. So when I was in treatment this last go round, 4.5 years ago, I had an idea that recovery coach is what I wanted to do. However, it wasn't, I didn't have all the information on exactly what a recovery coach was. So that's the first thing. I had, because I had the recovery information of, some of the fellowships that go by a couple of letters, I actually thought a recovery coach was just a sponsor that got paid being a person sponsor in the rooms. But I just knew I wanted to help people. I knew that was my calling. So when I walked into another organization, actually where Roscoe's at, the Gavin Foundation, one of the recovery coaches that was assigned to me was a friend of mine. And when I seen him in that chair at that desk on that computer and knowing his background and knowing where he came from and what he has gone through, I was sold immediately. And he's the one that redirected me again back to MassAbility. He got all the information for me and he said, "This is where you belong, bro." So I took the help and I took the information. Now, my background with, justice involved in certain situations, it wasn't an automatic for me. And sometimes what you want to do and what your visions and your goals are not going to be an automatic. But again, like I mentioned prior, to never giving up and believing in yourself, stay in your course, stay on your process. Because what happened was I became available to do other things in my community in order just to be a positive influence. But it put me in position for people to see what I was doing, know what my intentions was, and some doors started to open. Hi, Sarah. So I'm forever grateful to my place of employment, Mass General, because that was the first door that opened up for me in the field. They gave me a chance, right, when nobody else would at the time, or maybe because of the wreckage of my past didn't seem me worthy of having the positions that I was going for. So Mass General opened up the door for me, and just as just to be clear on things, I'm not a consultant for Mass General. I also have my own business that I do consultant work for. I'm a recovery coach at Mass General, and I also wear a few other hats in the field, helping people. They all have to do with helping people. But that door at Mass General that opened up for me has opened up so many doors that sometimes I still pinch myself. I had an excellent advocate at MassAbility who was really diligent and excited to see my progress and help me to continue to elevate and do what I need to do. She made sure Yvonne Talinsky made sure I had everything I needed, sometimes without me asking. She was just a wraparound services type of individual that when I spoke about my goals, my visions, and what I had in mind, she did everything to tweak every situation and never told me what I should do, need to do, have to do, but only supported me on what I wanted to do, which made a big difference because that's my lane today. I don't tell anybody what they should do, what they need to do, what they have to do. I support the many pathways of their recovery by telling them, I'm just here for you. And that's the hat I wear today. And it's made such an impact in my community and such a difference in the way that people perceive me, work with me, and deal with me on another level today that I really, really open my eyes every morning because that's the first blessing of the day. But the next blessing of the day is just knowing that I'm going to make a difference to somebody else's life and showing people that anybody can go from a mess to a message. Thank you all for having me, and I hope you all got something out of this today.
Hey, thank you, Lovely. It's great to have those supports out there too. And I know we're going to ask you in a couple of seconds about the recovery coach training that you went through, but I want to introduce first Erica. And Erica, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your path to the SUD field and what you did with recovery coaching through MassAbility. We're interested in hearing how MassAbility support influence your educational and career goals, a little bit about your background, the current role that you're in, and the role of employment, how it's played into your personal journey.
Good morning, everyone. I am very grateful to be here with you today. It's been a very long road to get here. I'm with you as a mom who is in long-term recovery from substance use and mental health challenges. My recovery journey has been very challenging. Growing up in Boston, I was introduced to substance use at a very young age. The environment I was in lacked guidance and the absence of like a support system, which really contributed to my early exposure of alcohol and drugs. In addition, mental health issues were prevalent in my family. So I found myself trapped in a cycle with like no clear direction or support to help me And I just continued down the path of destruction, filled with fear, low self-esteem. I finally came to a point where it was between life or death, honestly. And after multiple failures to sobriety, I was able to get into inpatient and a residential support program. I was able to gain and build a support system, which I was lacking, honestly. So it was also here that that little seed was planted for the desire to work in this field. And after achieving my first 90 days of sobriety, I began working like multiple jobs. We call them get well jobs in the back then. And it was mainly customer service. I'm very grateful for each role and the positions that I had, but I was still struggling in the employment field, really. Somehow I was able to obtain my high school diploma in active use, but I lacked any real skills or further education, and I really didn't know where to start. And I remember from the beginning of my recovery journey, one of the case managers at the program that I was in was able to obtain their degree with some support. However, I had the fear and the doubt that I wasn't going to qualify for the services, but I applied anyway. And then my journey began with MassAbility in 2022. I began the ACT Licensed Alcohol and Drug Counselor program. And then, returning to school as an adult learner, it wasn't easy. But with the support, I found that strength. My case manager and the entire team at MassAbility, they were really like my foundation at the beginning. They gave me the guidance and the motivation every step of the way. Will Jackson in particular was critical to my journey, and I'm like super incredibly grateful for him. He was understanding, available, super responsive, ready to help me and tackle any of the needs that I had. He was like my cheerleader, right? And then while I was in the ACT classes, I had Kathy Spear, who I must say, by far the most amazing instructor that I had, like I've ever had. She was not only supportive, but she was like an inspiration to me. And she just so happened to work at a local agency, High Point Treatment Center, which is right around the corner. So I began my first job in the field as a recovery coach with High Point while I completed my LADAC classes. And then after the first year, I was promoted to navigator case manager. And I'm now currently working towards my work experience hours to complete my requirements for the LADAC. I'm getting there. It was here. I also obtained my community healthcare worker certificate. And then for the navigator, I'm able to actually do things that I was helped with, like, helping my clients gain recovery supports or get outpatient, access to healthcare, complete legal requirements, apply for school, or even apply for MassAbility. I've done that many times. And this year I also decided to return to school and pursue a degree in human services. I am very determined to use my experience, my lived experience, and my experience with MassAbility and my experience with High Point to make a positive impact on others. I want to help others achieve their goals and overcome their own challenges. Employment has given me a purpose in this field and a drive to continue to learn and grow and get more skills and knowledge. And this experience has put me in a position to pass this along and empower others to achieve their own goals. And I really owe a great deal to MassAbility for this. You supporting me in this place in my life to get here, and I'm able to help others to get theirs. So I really appreciate you all, and thank you.
Hey, thank you, Erica. Thank you for sharing that too. I noticed that Fran put in the chat as well a little bit about the recovery coaches. And Erica explained that very well on how the recovery coaches that were trained through MassAbility and in partnership with Advocates for Human Potential, and they received their training through Choice Recovery Coaching located in Springfield. So the licensed and alcohol drug counselors, they completed their training through the Addiction Counselors Training Act program offered by High Point Treatment Center. So it's great to see that, Erica, you're going through this program. You're you're able to move on through and manage that with your family life, with your current work and going to training too. So that's a very heavy juggling act. One of the other things I want to mention too is that the evolution of the MassAbility program for recovery and late act counselors, it's also we're always looking for ways to improve the program. So over the years, we added on Diane McDonald, who's a retention specialist, who's been working with some of the things over the years that people have been working with, so that way they could guide them going on forward into the program. I know that Lovely mentioned a couple of different things that obstructed going forward in his career, but he overcame those barriers. And as he said, went from a mess to a messenger. So I think that's a good thing. But we've set up those support systems, not only with ACT, Choice Recovery, and AHP, but we've also done that here internally with MRC with our staff. So before we get into the question and answer section, I do have a couple of questions for Roscoe, Erica, and Lovely too. Roscoe, yeah, I do have a question for you. How did MassAbility support, in terms of recovery coach training, support shape your path into the SUD field? Can you share any specific resources or guidance that made a real difference in your journey, kind of like Erica did?
I I did my layout through at Boston
Mhm.
with MassAbility. Um, I, the work I was working with, she just was very supportive. When I told her who I was and that I also informed her that I had been in the union in the past, that I think I want to do, the late act program and work with, at the recovery home that I had graduated. We definitely discussed it and figured out, what would be a good, do I want to do it? Am I sure? She informed me of what it could consist of. She didn't allow me to go in there blindly. Uh, and the person that connected me with her also, I relied on him as well to understand, what it means to be a licensed addictions counselor. And then, of course, once I got into the classes, she was able to connect me with what was a pre-test. There was a program that you do a pre-test prior to testing. You know, I'm an adult learner, so I was not very young when I decided to enter school again. So I was very fearful of, if I can do it, even if I finish the classes, will I pass the test? Because you kind of hear people talk about the difficulties of the test. So what she did was she connected me with that like a pre-test prep course on top, and it wasn't about the questions of the test. It was more so about the whole process of how the room looks. What you do when you walk in there, the do's and don'ts of it, and it just relieved me. So like when I walked in, I believed in myself. I believe I would put my best foot forward and I would be able to graduate. And I did. And I actually did very well with the test. So just all of that like prep work and support and connecting me to the appropriate services just, was awesome. I can't say it enough that Teresa Young, she was my savior. I didn't even know if I'd be able to do it, but the repeated meetings that we'd have, she just wrapped arms around me and supported me.
That's fantastic. And I'm glad that you had that support system in play as you went through the whole entire journey, with going through the class, moving into the workplace itself. It sounds like you made some extreme strides to help support other people going forward into the future. Thank you. And then for Lovely, I do have a question for you. I know you were talking a little bit more about the current role that you have, but Lovely, could you discuss MassAbility's resources, the recovery coach classes, how it helped you in your journey, leading to your current role at Massachusetts General Hospital? That would be extremely helpful to hear about the training that you went through.
Okay, so again, the trainings, I can't say they were easy, but they were very comprehensible. It wasn't like a hard task to learn what I needed to learn in order to come in the field as a recovery coach. And I think for me, Paul Ives was like, he's like the man to me, right? There's like many examples of people who, help you, support you, but the way that he ran the trainings, like he took his time to make sure we understood things. He doubled back. Like he was just really on point with the way that he ran the trainings, which was very helpful for me because, like Roscoe just mentioned, like the fear of, going back into learning some new things as a more mature person in life and not thinking that you're going to be able to catch on or get things. But he made it fairly easy to be able to adapt and understand what I was trying to learn. And one of the biggest things that helped me is the way Yvonne worked with me. She would always, always contact me way ahead of time for preparation. It was never anything last minute, anything like, don't forget this. It was always preparation up until the point, and even supportive all the way to like a morning text, like good luck on your training today. Like little things like that, because one of the things like I hear and I know to be true is people don't care what you know till they know how much you care. So the way that she cared made a big difference in the support, because I've had so many obstacles that I created for myself that the best advice I got from her was you can't knock them all down today. Do one at a time. And having examples like Roscoe and Larry Bogarty ahead of me in this field, paving the way, coming from the same similar backgrounds, made such a significant difference in me knowing that I could do it too.
Fantastic. And you did. It sounded like you had a support structure.
And I'm still doing it, Mike, and loving every day of it.
There you go. And we're happy too that you're educating others today on your experiences, what people look for in the support systems that are out there as they're going through the training, because it's always difficult as you're going through it. There's conflicting factors that are outside the class, leading to you getting employment and staying in employment and being able to have that support infrastructure for you to move on forward. So it's good that you're spreading the word surrounding that and sharing that information out there too. Thank you, Lovely.
Doors are going to open up. Just don't get discouraged. Doors are going to open up. Stay in your process. Doors are going to open up. Don't get discouraged.
That's a good message. That's a good message out there, and stay consistent with it too. Don't give up.
That's
when
it.
people are reaching out to you. Even during our recovery coach classes that we do, we have our own internal staff who guide you along the way and will reach out to you if they notice something might not be quite right and be able to get you back on track again. So that way you're going through the course, you're gaining the knowledge. And then also just to back up a little bit too, you mentioned Paul. Paul's on the call. I noticed that Fran put in the chat that Paul is the founder executive director of Choice Recovery. Just an absolute...
Choice Recovery was big.
What's that?
Choice Recovery was major. Absolutely.
Yeah. And why do you think it was major?
Because it made my path, it made the path that I wanted to go on, it was available for the information that I needed in order to pursue my path.
Yeah. And did they feel that it sounds like they didn't herd you along with a group of people? It sounded like they really focused on you as an individual. Is that correct?
Yes, both. They did both.
Good.
As a group, in a group setting when we were on the trainings, but if you needed that one-on-one, or like the way Paul took his time to make sure everybody on there was on the same page as far as getting the information, I could just feel the energy of the difference that it made. He just wasn't doing it just to be doing it and get a check. Like I could feel the energy of the difference, and it made a difference to me. It was very inspiring and very helpful in my journey.
And that's what we support too, is we want to partner up with agencies and vendors who care about the candidates, understand what you're going through, and could guide you in an effective manner. Erica, I have a question for you. So I know you were talking a little bit before about the role that the choice recovery coaching ended up playing into helping guide you through the whole entire process. And I'm wondering if you could talk about a little bit more about the support infrastructure that led to your successful completion of the class and your growth into the field.
So I actually did mine with the ACT and AHP.
Okay.
That's who I worked with. And they were instrumental, honestly, with the support with emails. We had Zooms. There was always check-ins. And like Kathy Spear was my teacher. She was super, super supportive. Always took her time with us. Always answered emails while in class. But Sam from AHP, and she was in the background always, helping us, whether it be trying to get into the meeting or any kind of schoolwork. Just taking the time out and answering our questions, and just the support from all of the agencies collaborating together. I think that was instrumental in me succeeding, is having support from so many different agencies, MassAbility, AHP, High Point, and just everybody working together to support me as an individual coming into the field as an adult, in recovery. That was the biggest piece to me succeeding in the LADAC program.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah,
the
and I
collaboration.
remember when we first started running the program and we were trying to find individuals who wanted to participate in it. I remember giving you a phone call
Yeah,
and just talking to you initially about the program and seeing if you wanted to be a part of it. So that was good. I'm glad that everything worked out. We were able to get you into the program, and you were able to be a very effective person going forward in your career. So I'm very impressed. We made the right choice to introduce you into this, and I'm glad that you're able to move it forward into an excellent career out there.
Thank you.
So yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And then Roscoe, I have a question for you too. In what ways does your background and experience does it enable you to become a meaningful impact as a recovery coach supervisor? So it's a little bit different.
The person in recovery, and then with the training,
Mhm.
and with the education, and then the experience with the folks that work underneath me, I feel as though I am able to paint a picture as to why certain ways to coach and work with folks. So in other words, I've been in treatment in and out. I've had, short periods of time that I was, in recovery, and had more failures in recovery. And I always remember my last time in treatment, and I think about why it was successful and why I'm still a person that's, been abstinent for the period of time that I've been. And I think about the way the counseling was facilitated to me and given to me and carried me through the process. Most of the people I encountered through this process, they took a moment to understand me, hear what I was asking them, uh, and hear me say what I thought I needed to be successful in life again. Some people that come into the field have their own ideas of what they want to do for people, but you can't in the field of helping people, you want to hear what they're asking you and hear what they're asking you to help them do, and put aside your own opinions and thoughts. Um, I think I think Lovely, or maybe somebody just set up a like thinking like it was it's paid, that there's a reason, there's something behind it. And for me, I tell them that there is something behind it. It's to allow somebody to have a voice, and it's for you to be able to support their voice and advocate through them. And that's like that's what I really push for the folks that work underneath me. We're here to advocate for folks, we're here to listen to them, and we're here to relay the message that they are putting out. Um, because I feel like that's what made a difference for me this hopefully, which was my last time entering treatment. was heard, and people helped me get to where I want to be. I want to say another quick thing. I didn't really get to say it,
Sure.
but with doing the LADAC program, like I said, being an older person, kind of newer in recovery, a lot of doubts, a lot of fears, and not knowing if I could do it or not. Because I had the support when I started the LADAC program and completed the LADAC program and got my license, it's what gave me the belief that I could enter school again and get my associate's degree. And when I did that, I started to believe I could maybe go a little bit further in school, which kind of just continually pushed me towards one, learning about, learning ways to help people, but also it definitely gave me some belief in myself and that, that anything is possible and don't give up. I think Lovely said it, to the point, you know, it didn't happen quickly for me,
Mhm.
but it has happened. And that's what I'm happy for, that it has happened. And so like starting off with just, with through Mass Abilities has put me in a place that I would never believe that I could even existed for me. So again, I just say thank you guys. I appreciate it. And it is, I'm forever grateful for the process.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Roscoe, on that. So let's flip the sides on this because we're talking a lot about what it did for you in order to move things on forward and making impact out there. But what advice would you give to organizations who are looking to integrate talent from similar backgrounds into their teams?
Uh, I, in a prior situation, I did leave a past job and I went to another one. And I remember like when I got the interview, it was more of like informing me of the foundation. And that like kind of wrapping up the interview, there was a question of, well, what is it, what are your plans in the field? And everything I said at that meeting, I have followed through and done it, and then some. So what I say is we come from a background of people that, have had some difficulties, with addiction, even prior to, actively using, just the past lifestyles that just led us up into today. I suggest you give a person in recovery, a person that is seeking service through MassAbility. I suggest you give them a chance because I know we're dedicated people. I know that we are sincere people, and I know that with our past experience, in our personal experience with the field, I think we give it that much light that brings people, closer to us that are willing to hear us when they know that it's genuine and they know that it's sincere, and I know that to speak in layman's term, when they know it's real. Um, I suggest, giving us a shot because I know what I've brought to the field, to the agency, and to people in my community. It's just, it's worth giving us a shot and seeing that we can definitely help people.
And Roscoe, what do you think makes a person in recovery a good candidate out there for employment with an agency?
What makes a person in recovery a good candidate for employment?
Yeah.
To speak to myself, I know that what made me a good employee is that I made a decision, my mind had changed, and I wanted to see other people feel the way I felt.
Good. Good. Thank you, Roscoe. All right, lovely. I have another question for you. Um, so getting back onto employment and hiring people who are in recovery, what strategies or practices would you suggest to employers to help them better support employees who are in recovery?
I would say one of the best things that I know makes a big difference for what we do, specifically as recovery coaches, is making sure that the cultural competency piece is intact. And what I mean by that is understand because there's differences in different communities, different areas, ethnicities, so and difference, and knowing how to make those same resources, same information, relatable to everybody, competency wise, makes a difference. If you place somebody in the middle of a situation where they have no idea what's going on, it doesn't matter how certified they are, how many books they read, how many classes they took. The competency of the coaches that you're working with is one of the key things that's going to make you effective in your role.
Yeah. And then Erica, one last question for you, before we answer a couple of questions and wrap up. What advice would you give to organizations who want to foster an environment where individuals in recovery could thrive and succeed?
Some advice to give the agency, it would be, promoting self-care, because that's something, my recovery comes first. I don't have anything else. Everything I've earned is gone if I don't have my recovery. So that self-care and promoting that self-care, I think is a key piece for individuals in recovery in this field. Also, supportive, understanding. We have families, we have meetings and support groups. And when we're in a good place in our recovery, I feel like I can give back even more, so that main piece is definitely promoting self-care.
Fantastic. Yeah. And it's also too, what do you think are some of the qualities? Why should employers hire people who have come from recovery?
Well, we're resilient, that's for sure. And we are determined and we can overcome challenges. So when we're in it, we're in it. So the main points.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to thank everybody too. I know that we're coming up on break and I'm seeing a couple of questions come through. Fran, I know that Fran Bosch from AHP, I know that you've been answering quite a few questions in the chat as well. Is there anything that was missed out there that maybe I could answer, or are there questions directly to Erica, Roscoe, or Lovely that may be asked?
Yeah, there is one question for all of the panelists to talk about. Oh, and I'm sorry, Katie's going to answer read that question.
Absolutely. So there are a few questions about education, and I'll point to the chat. Fran and Jen both shared a link for the careers of substance. But also there was a question in the Q&A. After all the hard work of going to school and completing trainings, which can be spiritually rewarding, do you feel that the financial compensation is adequate for the effort and journey? And that's to any and all of the panelists. Erica, do you want to start?
Well, for me, as I previously mentioned, I'm coming from positions of customer service. So any jump up was meaningful to me. And I see as as I went from recovery coach to recovery support navigator, and hopefully when I get my late Act 2 and then further on when I complete my bachelor's, I do think that I am well compensated in my experience so far.
Thank you, Erica. And we have time for one more question, I think. So this question is about diversity within recovery. My organization struggles with finding diverse recovery coaches for our program. Any tips of how to recruit diverse staff with lived experience? So does anybody want to answer that question? Erica, Roscoe, Lovely?
Well, for me, I know Mass General is big on diversity and inclusion, and I'm actually a great example of that. But what I would say for other organizations is you have to make it worth it for people to want to come on board. And sometimes from what I hear from other people in other organizations, it's not worth it for them to come on board compensation wise because they feel like they're not being compensated properly opposed to other organizations. So that's what I would say. If you're having trouble, maybe if some organizations are having trouble, Maybe it's about, upping the ante where it's something that people can live off of. We know this is one of the hardest states to make it in financial wise. So maybe, looking back at the books and making an upgrade to the pay could be more inviting for people to start seeking out employment at their organizations.
I can jump in real quick too and say in answer to the first question, I feel as though, yes, as I've moved through the process of, starting off with a LADAC all the way up into the position I'm in now, I feel like I've been financially compensated. I'm, I'm not rich in any way, but I feel like definitely the more I move through the process, I was compensated just about every time. And to speak to the diversity concept, I mean, I'm a Black man. I am a program director, in the foundation I work for, there's definitely a lot of diversity in some things that I come to find out why we're so diverse is that what we do is, something kind of lovely said, me as a program director, I'm familiar with with folks that, of the same culture or same, race as me. I have found ways to get them employed into the agency. And that's just throughout, like the best reference for positions within our agency is who do I know, who's looking for a job, who's a good employee, helping them connect with the gap, with the foundation. So I guess, if you start off just at least opening the doors and allowing diverse cultures to be there, they'll bring in more people. Then it kind of becomes, not a process. It just becomes the norm and works its way through your agency.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm taking a look at the time right now. And as we wrap up the session, I want to extend a warm thank you to our incredible panelists. So your stories, the information that you gave us, not only demonstrate not only the resilience and dedication of each of you has shown in your journey, but also the transformational role that programs like MassAbility play in building a stronger, more inclusive behavioral workforce. So, sharing your experiences and your input, you've highlighted how organizations can effectively support individuals in recovery, turning career aspirations into reality and making a positive impact within the SUD field. So, our next session it will dive deeper into the critical themes of recruitment, retention, specifically focusing on innovative strategies to attract and support employees in recovery. But I think we're going to take a real quick 10-minute break first. And Susan Lang will be moderating this discussion with a panel of experts. So Dick Quinlan from Jeremiah's Inn, Dr. James Golden from Tarzana Treatment Centers, Susie Langvin from Open Sky Community Services, and together they're going to explore forward-thinking approaches that foster a supportive and resilient workplace culture. So one that only welcomes employees in recovery, but empowers them to thrive. So thank you again to our panelists, and let's transition now to our next session, but I think we're going to take a break first and return at 11:25. So thank you so much.